Thank you, everyone. I think I'd rather be behind a music stand in my corner over there. This is just a little bit different, but I think I'll survive. Thank you again for coming to hear our story. Tom just kind of ruined the ending. So yes, my husband did not die. We did get married, and that was him. So, anticlimactic, we survived. But it really is a great story that I've been wanting to share for a while, or needing to share for a while. And shortly after all of this happened, which I'll tell you, which we'll go through here shortly, I remember my good friend saying, you need to write this down. You need to write this down. I said, I know, so much good came of that time, so many graces, and it was amazing. It truly was amazing. And to not share that or to forget some of those details before they could be remembered again and shared again would be a loss. So thank you, Tom. Third time's a charm, and I'm finally here sharing my story as we enter into Advent. So I had a really wonderful intro that came to me today on my drive to work. And I was in the car and talking to myself aloud, as I often do when I'm by myself, and thinking about this talk tonight and realizing I should probably figure out a way to start. And I had this really great introduction that just sort of came to me, and I'm like, oh, wow, that would be perfect. And of course, I'm driving, and I'm talking to myself like I always do, so I don't think to record on my phone anything I'm just putting out there. And now I wish I had, because it was really good. So sorry you missed out on that. But I hope that I can still get you involved, and I can still share our story, and hopefully there's something that will stand out from this evening that you can take with you, that will touch your heart and be remembered. So that's my hope. So first of all, I want you to think of, I don't want you to think of all the bad news on the television, but think of, just very briefly, all of those disaster scenarios that we see, and the news reporters interviewing the people, of course, like at their lowest, right after their home's been burned, or tornadoes taking out their whole town. And I often sit there, and Gerard too, and I feel my heart just goes out to some people, because often you'll hear, oh my gosh, I just don't know what we're going to do. We have no idea what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to survive. And I was always sad to hear that, not only because of what they had lost, but I'm like, do they have a faith? Can they fall back to, what do they have that they can fall back on for support to help them through these times? And it made us very thankful that we had that faith to fall back on. So, and that's what got us through this time. So I feel like we should just start with a little background. And as you listen to this story, I've always felt that, if I was given a choice, I think if any of us were given a choice of easy versus challenging life, we'd be like, no thanks, I'll go over here. This is kind of nice. I'll just stay where it's kind of calm and, things are just going along. And I think many people could look back on this time and go, oh my gosh, that was so terrible. And all I remember from this time, all these years ago, is, yeah, I wouldn't have chosen it, but it wasn't terrible. And I'm grateful, in a sense, for that experience, because of the amount and the outpouring of graces and of prayer shared with us and seen within the community. So keep that in mind as you're listening to our story, and just how faith, the support of faith, is just so important in how we live and how we go through life. So this is us. This is my husband, Gerard. That was not quite on our first date, but about a month after we met. So I have to take you back to 2017. Our first date was on Friday, September 1st. Should be easy to remember, though we always forget to go out and have dinner on that day to celebrate. I don't know why. But he called and he's like, hey, let's go out to dinner. And thus ensued a half an hour conversation back and forth about where to go for dinner. And that was the beginning. But he thought he would stick around, so I figured that was good. And on that first date, he said, I like to listen to you talk. And I remember thinking, oh boy, you have no idea what you are asking, but we're still here. So we figured that out a little bit. But so that was our first date, Friday, September 1st. And then it went so well, we got together again on Sunday, the 3rd, after church, and we went to the NDSU Gardens on 12th Avenue and kind of by 18th Street. Had a lovely time, took some nice other pictures. And then shortly after that, he invited me to this work event for families. But we're not a family. It's like, that's okay, nobody's gonna mind. So this is October, and he's like, let's do this. So we piggybacked that with a hike. He's like, you need to see this. So we hiked to North Dakota's only waterfall. I'm like, yeah, right. And he's like, no, it's real. North Dakota has a waterfall. Arm's not long enough. Oh, there we go. See the waterfall in the background? He wasn't kidding. I was like, okay. So we got back from our lovely hike and, sitting around the bonfire, kind of wrapping up the day, and it had been about a month, and things were going really well, and suddenly we were talking about the future and what that might look like, and, marriage came up, and both of us, we're in our 40s and never been married and no kids and living on our own for all this time, and well, that would be nice, but it's going to be kind of hard, don't you think? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a little worried about that part, but all right. And I think that could work. I think I'd be up for something like that. That sounds like a good deal. Yeah, this is sounding good. And I said, but we can't do anything. Not until after the renovations at St. Anthony's are done, because we were in the middle of our renovations. So I'm like, it's not like we can get married next week. And he's like, well, that's good, because I don't have a ring yet. And I'm like, okay, great, we've got some time. So that was October, and we're happily going through the fall and just enjoying our time together. And December was tough. We had to say goodbye to his father in December, and I got to meet his family in, kind of the best, worst case scenario, meeting everybody in the hospital in weird locations around somebody who's dying, but they were lovely, and we shared that moment together, and it was kind of bittersweet because they had said goodbye to his mom 2 years before that, also in December. So we're like, man, December is just not really great, but we were trying to make the best of things. So that's us that Christmas, December of 17. That was our first Christmas together. Went pretty well. We made it through December. So January of 2018, I was kind of wrapping up or in the middle of my 13th year working for PDS, or the North Dakota Center for Sleep. They were my first real job, the one I had been at the longest, and wonderful people, and actually, no, that's a disservice. They are really great people, like really good-hearted people. I kind of miss working there. Man, we had so many laughs. But that was 13 years working in the sleep center. And every year, one of our sleep tech managers would come in and have to do like a CPR recertification class for our respiratory therapists. And so every year I'd be making copies for Diane, and I never attended the CPR classes because whatever. But I got kind of on the back end. I saw the materials, I made enough copies, I could kind of hear them in the back and whatever. And I also became more familiar with sleep apnea. Not that I snored, how would I know? I was living by myself. The kitties snored, but who knows? But that was my sort of background with the sleep center. And then at the end of that month, they did some restructuring, and I found that I no longer had a job at the sleep center. And it was a mixed blessing. I felt it was time to move on, but it's hard to move on. And in the end, I was fine with kind of having that little nudge to like, okay, your time here is done. I'm like, okay, my time here is done. Things will work out fine. It was my birthday in February. We had a trip planned in February. Made the best of it. Gerard, the best part of February is Gerard started working days. He had been working nights at Bobcat for many, many years. And I thought just a few years, but I found out later it was many, many, many years, almost the whole time he had been there. And he switched to days so that we could have Wednesday night date night, because you see, he didn't live in Fargo. He lived in Enderlin, and he worked in Gwinner. And so we would only be able to get together for church on Sunday, or maybe a lunch on Saturday, very short visits for the weekend. So now we could get together for dinner on Wednesdays. That was like the highlight of February. And then March came, and I thought I should probably start looking for a job, and I came here to one of St. Anthony's Lenten fish dinners, and it was at the dinner that I learned of an opening for a job. And in April, I started at the Diocese of Fargo, at their administrative offices in South Fargo. So what a blessing, and what an April, what a May. I was new, my boss was new. Neither one of us had any idea what we were doing, but we muddled through. It was like the busiest time of the year. It was great, it was exciting. Didn't have time to think of anything else except that, we talked about getting married a while ago and nothing's happening, so I should maybe revisit the subject. So August came, and I remember we were having a chat. I said, okay, well, if we want this to happen, like things need to start moving. And Gerard's like, well, I don't have a ring for you yet. And I was shocked. I'm like, what? We talked about this a year ago. I just assumed you'd be like ready. And he's like, no. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go ring shopping. When do you want to go? And so it was kind of a crazy couple of weeks. And then one Wednesday date night, like I didn't hear from him, and because he would usually call before he would get on his way. And all of a sudden, he just showed up at the house at his usual time. And I'm like, oh, well, it's great. I assumed you were coming. It's great to see you. He's like, oh, there was stuff I needed to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that Wednesday date night in September, on September 12th, we got engaged. And it was a lot of fun, and it was memorable, and he was nervous, and I knew what was coming once we got in the car. But it was still really wonderful. And I remember that day fondly. The only thing was, though, that I was leaving on my first ever work trip, like paid work trip, ever in my whole life, ever, for a week. We were going to Arizona, Scottsdale, in September. I don't know why. It sounded awful, but it was a time away from work. But we were leaving the next morning at 6, so I'm like, well, this isn't really fair. Like, we get engaged, and then I have to leave town. So my boss, other than my best friend, I let her know, but then my boss, Father Metzger and Father Paul Dukeshire, who was giving us a ride to the airport, they were the next people to find out that we were engaged. So, and then I had 3 whole days with total strangers that I couldn't really be the weird person, like, hey, guess what, I got engaged. Okay, back to work. But anyways, We got back on Tuesday, and I was kind of worried. My coworker had been dating her guy for a while, and I was like, gosh, I feel kind of weird if we got engaged and they didn't yet. And I come back to, no worries, I come back to find that, they got engaged like the same time. She already had her whole wedding plan. They were getting married in March, and I was like, I don't know what I was worried about, but so both of us were engaged. It's all good. We're moving on. Things are great. Let's start making plans. November came. We decided on an August 2020 wedding. We did the dress shopping. I bought my dress. We ordered the rings. Everything was coming into place. Gerard breaks his finger, not the ring finger, which is good. So, we're still okay there. And then Friday, November 30th, the start of it all. And all these little pieces seem to play into just the feeling of everything, how things are set up, how things fall into place, these inconsequential details that you don't think anything of, that then you look back on and you're like, oh, well, that was good that happened because of whatever. So I got a call from Gerard on Friday, and he was often working overtime on Saturdays. And so I wouldn't get to see him until Sunday or late, maybe a later dinner Saturday and then again Sunday morning. But I got a call from him, and he's like, hey, honey, I don't have to work on Saturday, so let's do dinner tonight. And I'm like, wow, that's great. That's wonderful. So he sent me this photo. This is him on November 30th. One of their projects they were working on, some big semi, I think, or big truck backed into the loading dock area, so they were fixing this part on the loading dock area. And so he sent me that photo, and he's like, I'm going to clean up, and then I'll be in Fargo. And I said, sounds good. I'll see you in a couple hours. He got to town, and he was so tired. He fell asleep on the couch, and I was like, okay, so much for dinner. But then he woke up, and then we had a late dinner, and I was like, this is still fine. I'm a late night person. It's good. We had a lovely evening, and he's like, I just need to rest. I just need to shut my eyes a little bit before, I have to go anywhere. And I'm like, that's fine. You rest. I'll do a few things in the other room. Well, I ended up dozing off to watching the news or whatever was on. And all of a sudden, must have been like an hour later, I hear the sound of the sleep apnea, the gasping for breath. And all my years at the sleep center, I'm like, that sounds like sleep apnea. And I start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, another gasp. And I'm like, okay, he's fine. But then there was nothing. 1, 2, 3, and I'm kind of like, hey, what's going on? Or like, hey, I walk over and give him a nudge. And he gasps again. I was like, okay, we're good. Kind of hold it. It's dim in there. It's just the lamp on in the corner, so I can't really see much, but and as I'm walking away again, I hear this very abnormal sound come from him. It's very alarming. And I immediately stop, and I turn back around. And there's no sound after that. So I flip on the light switch, the overhead light, and I walk up to him, and his eyes are open, and they're blankly staring straight ahead. And his lips have like this blue cast to them. And he's now kind of sliding down onto the floor because I've done such a good job of trying to nudge him back awake. I've essentially sort of pushed him off, his seated, out of his, position here. And I immediately jump into action. I'm thinking, wow, this is not good. So I get my arms under his shoulders, and I'm like, he needs to get on a hard surface, so I get him on the floor. And there's this voice in my head. My gosh, what if this would have happened if he was in Enderlin? He should have been working tomorrow. If he was working tomorrow, he wouldn't be here tonight. If he was working, what would have happened? And And strangely, as I was having that what if thought, at the same exact time, I was having this other thought that just sort of blanketed that one and calmed it down and said, well, of course this wouldn't have happened if he was in Enderlin. It happened because he's in Fargo. Or this is the way it was meant to happen, you know? So I'm like, okay. I'm very good at medical dramas, very good at, so very calm in a crisis. So Gerard's on the floor, I grab the landline phone, I dial 911, I start chest compressions because I've made all those copies from all the CPR things, so I know what to do, right? No, I should have taken the CPR class. I managed. I could have done a little bit better, but I did manage. And I'm thinking, always one step ahead. I'm on the phone with the operator. He's on speaker on the landline. I'm doing chest compressions. He's counting 1, 2, 3, 4. And my music person is like, okay, are we doing this on 1 and 3? Or like 1 and 4? Or like, and he's like, no, 1, 2. And I'm like, you mean now? So I'm having this discussion with the operator, poor guy. And in the meantime, I'm thinking, okay, what needs to happen? Okay, lights on, doors need to be open. And so I'm grabbing the phone, and I sprint up so fast, and I run down the half flight of stairs, and I throw open the door, and I turn on the lights, and I get back up, and he's like, okay, now, where are you? Are you able to, turn on? And I'm like, already done it. Lights are on, doors open. What's next? And it's like, he's like, okay, just hold on. And I'm like, okay. I can't believe this is happening. This is really weird. Okay, anything else I need to do? He's like, no, just wait. I'm like, okay. Now I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 down thing, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not remembering the Staying Alive song, but we're there, we're managing. First responders are there so quickly, right? I mean, they're fast. I mean, we lived by Bennett Elementary, so it's not like we were out of town by any means, but I mean, they were there fast. So first it's the first responders, then it's the police, then it's the ambulance, then it's the fire truck, and it became this game of how many emergency personnel can we fit inside of Danielle's tiny, home in South Fargo and up the stairs, and it was a lot. It was a lot of people. We were having a party at 1 a.m. It was not fun. So they take over, and next steps, they're trying to get information, what happened. And so I'm going through the scenario. He was tired. We went out for dinner. We came back. He fell asleep. I heard, this thing. And they're like, okay. And I can hear the medical personnel up in the upstairs. And they're shocking him. And I confirm with the gal who's taking my information. I'm like, they're shocking him, aren't they? She's like, yeah. So they got him breathing on his own, but he wasn't able to sustain it on his own, and so they had to shock him again and intubate him and get him masked, and then they, were about to wheel him outside, and I was like, oh, he hates the cold. I mean, we're technically December 1st now, and it's cold, and it's snowy, and it's icy, and it's windy, and he's just there bare-chested with a little blanket on, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey, but just hold on. So she's taking my phone number, and she's like, okay, so best way to reach you. And I'm like, no, that's the landline. Call my cell, switch it to my cell. She's like, wait a second, that's the what? And I said, yeah, I have a landline. Whatever, I called 911 on the landline phone. She's like, how? I'm like, 911 speaker? Like, what do you mean how? She's like, well, the reason we were so close is because we were responding to a car accident just down on the corner. Because it was so icy, a car had gone off the road and onto the boulevard and taken out, those green phone boxes. And so, all your neighborhood has no service. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but my phone worked and you're here. So she's like, oh, interesting, okay. And I was like, thank you, Lord. That little tiny miracle, first of what turns out to be many. But all this is going on, and I'm calm, and I'm in the back of my mind, I'm sending a prayer. Just help, Lord, help us get through this. Help Gerard, be with him, help me, help the emergency responders. I figured I had to do something more physical, though, and so I texted Father Courtwright, who is our parish priest here at the time, and I knew, I'm like, I should call him. No, he's sleeping. I don't want to wake him. I don't know where we're going. I'll just text him and then tell him Gerard's stopped breathing. We're going to the hospital. I'll give you more information later. Because I'm practical like that. Why wake him up when I don't have all the information, right? So I get that done. I drive to the ER. It is extremely icy, but I get there. And I sit there in the waiting room, and Father Courtwright calls me back. He's like, why didn't you call me? And I'm like, I knew you would get it. I wasn't worried. I'm fine. I'm just sitting in here. He's in good hands. We're okay. He's like, I'll be down there shortly. And I said, okay. We're officially Saturday, December 1st. Gerard's a 46, otherwise healthy male, and he stopped breathing, and his heart stopped, and we don't know why. And now we're dealing with the aftermath of that. So while I'm waiting, I text my good friends, my good girlfriends, Cassandra and Gretchen, and I tell them what happened and where we are. The ER doc comes out, and she's like, we really don't know what's going on. We've ruled a few things out, but it looks like he's having seizures. But he's not really. It looks like he's trying to come out of his, out of the anesthesia, what they had to give him since he was intubated. But then he'll start having seizure-type movements. But then he'll start like it's purposeful. But then a minute later, he'll go back to like it's not purposeful. So we really don't know what is going on. But he's not waking up, and he can't keep sitting on the fence like this. So we'd like to put him in an induced coma. And I said, okay, do whatever you need to do. And so they tell me how they do that. And I'm like, oh, he hates being cold. You're going to cool him down. And they're like, and I'm like, I know, do it. But I tell you, he's not going to like it. And they're like, well, maybe he'll wake up. And I'm like, actually start on that right away then, hoping that he'll come back to us. So usually they do that, and then, the body has about, 24 hours to kind of rest, reset. The hope is that the patient then, as they start warming them up again, will kind of come to. And Gerard, being the stubborn German that he is, did not. He just kept sleeping. So now is officially Sunday, December 2nd, and Gerard is not awake when he should be. And it was fitting. I remember thinking, okay, this is the first Sunday of Advent. And here we are. Very fitting. So the first Sunday of Advent is the hope that we have in God's promises. And that first night in the hospital, I called on another very dear friend because I knew Gerard was in good hands, but I didn't want to leave him alone, And so I called Jan, our own very Jan, our very prayerful Jan Clocky. And I said, Jan, I'm wondering if I could ask you a tremendous favor, and would you be willing to come and sit with Gerard overnight? And she's like, oh, no, honey, I'd love to. We'll just say rosaries all night, and I'll just talk to him and stay with him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so great. This is wonderful. And so Jan just had an all-night rosary with Gerard that first night. It didn't wake him up, but I felt good about that. And I remember thinking, Lord, this is not, we just got engaged. Like, I know the ways that this could go, but I don't think that that's what you have in mind for us. I hope that that's not what we have in our future, but I honestly don't think that this is what you have in mind for us. So just day by day, take us through this time, if you would, please, and be with us in these days ahead. It's going to be a long haul. So this is something I wrote on Monday, December 3rd. It says, Advent is a season of waiting. This is not exactly what I had in mind for our second December together, but we do not know the plans of our God. We can hope and we can pray. So keep those prayers coming. We are surrounded by love and by so many. Thank you. I love this man's twinkly eyes and his rosy cheeks, and I miss his hugs. This is all I want for Christmas. That was what I posted on Facebook. So the next day, Tuesday 4th, Gerard is still not awake. His in-laws arrive, my girlfriends are there. One of my very best girlfriends dropped everything when she got my text Saturday morning and drove up from the cities to stay with me for a few days and help just with things with Gerard. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are such a good friend. I am so blessed. I'm so blessed. We are so blessed. So we just kept going day by day. Tuesday was his first EEG. It was not good. His neurologist wanted to do a consult. She's like, I'd like to bring in a consult. He's not, he's a pediatric, he's on the pediatric side, but I really trust his experience. And I'm like, sure. And she's like, yeah, okay, so if you're okay, I'd like to call Dr. Deacock. And I was like, you mean Chris? She's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I've known him for years. We went to Newman Center together. He goes to our church. She's like, well, that's who I want to call. And I'm like, sounds great to me. Make the call. Let's see what we can find out. So another just like moment of, okay, we're in good hands. The Lord's watching out for us, Wednesday the 5th, I'd obviously has known what's been going on for the last few days, and my boss, Father Metzger, he's like, I'd like to come and say Mass at Gerard's bedside, if that's okay. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course that's okay. So Father Metzger came in, and we set a time to say Mass, and Cassandra was there, my best girlfriend who lived just a block away and from the hospital, and Gerard's brothers. Art was there from New Hampshire, Killian from Duluth, his sister Stacy was coming in from California the next day. We had some very dear friends also join us for Mass. One was John, who's here this evening, and John happened to be one of the owners of the sleep clinic that I had worked for up until the previous year. And so that just testifies to the heart of those people in your lives that are there with you, the ones that really do care and that will be there to support you and offer prayers and encouragement and all that. So John was there along with a couple other people. We had a wonderful Mass. Father, I think you might have anointed him at that point. And I think to top it off, he wiggled his toe. But we were all very happy about that. We'll take a toe wiggle at this point because he's still not awake. Thursday morning, I got the call from his brothers who had beat me to the hospital. And they're like, you better get here because he's not doing well. And I joked, and I said, well, were you guys arguing? What were you doing? And they're like, I don't know, but you need to get here. So they did his first MRI then, and we're trying to get a handle on, okay, is he still really having seizures? Why isn't he waking up? We're giving him all the medication. He should not be still sleeping. He should be waking up, and he is not. And they were doing everything that they could think of, but things were not looking good. Friday, the following day, Friday was a serious day. Friday the 7th, it had been almost a week, and the conversation was about anoxic brain injury, and from his medical record it says, his abnormal EEG in coma state due to the presence of diffuse background slowing, global cortical dysfunction, and moderate to severe encephalopathy. I could tell you I Googled what all that meant in 18, and now I forgot most of it, but it was not good. Let's just take it there. And again, it was like, Lord, I don't think you have this in mind for us, but if things could change, that would be lovely. So Friday was a really hard night. But what do? You say your prayers and you give it to God and you face the next day. And so Saturday the 8th, 1 week, this is what I wrote on Facebook. It says, Saturday was a much better day for Gerard. His twinkly eyes are back. He was awake. He has strong grip, and they have him sitting up in a chair for a little while during the day. He does his best to answer questions and engage in conversation, which is truly a miracle, especially since he is such a talker, which he is not. His speech needs some work, but some words are obvious, like coffee. That was very clear. He likes his coffee. So please keep the prayers coming. They are working. The power of prayer and what 24 hours can do is truly amazing. And that whole time, I was just floored. And it was palpable. You could feel it. And you could feel it working. And you could see it working. And it was really wonderful. The next day, Sunday, December 9th, is the second Sunday of Advent. Peace. It's peace that comes from trusting in God. We had Mass here with his brothers and sisters that had come into town, and we trusted that our prayers would be heard and answered. December 12th, they did a second MRI, and it almost looks normal. The first one was a complete disaster. Did not look good at all. And this one looked like almost nothing. Everything was normal. It was truly a miracle. There were no more tubes. He was out of critical care. The initial brain injury from lack of oxygen due to that first event, he was still confused. It left him confused. His past events and his timelines did not sync up. Every time they would come into his room, they would do the cognitive assessment, like, what day is it? Where are you? How old are you? He made himself 7 years younger, and I'm like, this is so not fair. Who's the president? Bush? I'm like, okay, he's a few behind. And the nurse is like, yes. And I'm like, let's not tell him that Trump is president now. I think that might make him go on the backslide. She's like, I agree. We'll leave him at Bush. So yeah, he remembered his birthday. Where do you work? Oh, I work at the KO company. Okay, where do you live? Oh, I live in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Okay, well, he's been living in Enderlin and working in Gwinner for the 20 years up at that point, so he's 20 years off. I mean, his facts are good. His timelines are just 20 years off. We have some syncing to do, but I'm hopeful we'll get there. 20 years is a gap, but we'll get there eventually, right? They do this every time they come into his room. One time, in the back of my mind, I know some of the questions that have to be asked. I don't really want to ask the questions because I know what the answers will be. But there comes a time where I have to ask the questions. I come with my little cheat sheet. And so the nurse goes through her questions, and I'm like, I have a few more questions. He's like, okay. What's my name? Silence. My name's Danielle. He knew who I was, like he recognized me, but he didn't know my name, this man that proposed just 3 months before. That was hard, but I was expecting that. So I said, that's okay. I made you a cheat sheet. And I had my paper with my name and my birth date and where I lived and what I did. And I'm like, you can keep this. I'll post it on your cabinets here so you can practice. And then I left it at that. Another time, my friend Cassandra was in the room, and she had mentioned something about being engaged, and he got this look on his face, like, I wish I was there, but she said it was comical. He looked scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm engaged? What? Are you kidding me? So we eventually worked through that. It was some rough times, but there was levity, and you just had to go with that and just keep hope. One of my thoughts from around that time, it says, he was sitting up in his chair when I arrived this morning, and he had just finished breakfast. He is walking with someone supporting him, and his balance and his strength are coming back. His hand coordination is getting better with practice, and he did a fine job of brushing his teeth with occupational therapy this morning. He looks much better, and he'll wink at you. Well, maybe it's just me. We are so grateful for the power of prayer and for the many ways God has shown he's been with us during this time. Again, that power of prayer, like you could feel it beaming down. It was so abundant, you could sense it, right? Rosaries were being said, saints were being asked for their intercession, prayers were being said in the Holy Land. There's such an outpouring of graces from friends and family and loved ones and coworkers, and friends were telling me, I've been thinking about going back to church, and I come up with an excuse all the time. And hearing your story about Gerard, I went back to church for the first time in a couple of years. And another coworker, it's like, we used to say a family rosary years ago, and we stopped. But we said one the other day. We said one for Gerard, and we'll do it again. And I'm like, what a wonderful thing. Someone made a comment in one of the posts, and they said, prayers and faith are not limited by the bounds of evidence-based medicine. I don't think anyone can work in healthcare and not believe in the power of faith. Another one commented, you have an entire Catholic family larger than you can imagine, bathing the two of you in prayer, and where two of you are gathered in his name, prayers will be heard. And that is so true. Sunday the 16th brings us to the third Sunday of Advent, which is joy. I said Gerard is eating, talking, walking, though he tends to wander. He looks so much better. He even gave himself a shave 2 days ago. I was a little worried about the outcome, but it doesn't look half bad. It is truly miraculous. Continue to pray for us that we have the faith, the hope, trust, and the grit for this journey. God is so very good. Sunday the 23rd is the fourth season of Advent, all about love. It says we started this journey with hope, and we needed it. I can't begin to tell you all the ways in which God has shown his divine hand in all of this, from the excellent care from compassionate medical staff to bringing friends and families together, to being the reason some needed to get back to church. We've had a meaningful December, and even in the first week after that first heartbreaking prognosis, even after his miraculous progress, I knew that the hard part is still ahead of us. But the third Sunday is about rejoicing, and he's so much stronger now, and his personality is coming back. I got my first hug this last week and my first phone call from him a day ago. So happy. It's all about love, and I love this man, and it's hard. It's hard to see him confused and not know where he is. It's hard to see him get his stories mixed up, not remember some things at all, like our first date or when he proposed. It's hard to see him struggle to write his name or to tie a bow. And I mean, he has all these fancy shoes with all these fancy laces. Like, he needed to figure out how to tie a bow again, that was for sure. It was hard to see him confused and irritable and looking for back doors that don't exist in his room or his bathroom and being frustrated at the end of the day. And it's hard to remain patient when I unpack his clothes and put them in the dresser drawers of his hospital room, only to walk in the room the very next morning to find that he's emptied all of the drawers and put his clothes back in his bag. Although I probably shouldn't have blamed him because he just wanted to get out of the hospital. So things are getting better every day, though, and I'm thankful for that. We spent Christmas in the hospital. That's my friend Cassandra and her husband and her 2 kids. We call them the mice because it's Mike, Isaac the son, Cassandra, and Ella, mice, M-I-C-E. I always give a chuckle at that because it looks like they're our kids, not their kids. But they are kind of our kids. You know, we spoil them, so we're aunties and uncles by love, if not by blood or marriage. There's us. Christmas. Gerard doesn't remember that. He's there. He's lost some weight. So not fair. Like, who loses weight over the holidays? I'm happy he's with us, but he doesn't look the same. He doesn't look the same as he did. So we have a long road ahead of us. Yet. We spent New Year's in the hospital as well because we were waiting for orders to go to his rehab. So this was New Year's at Essentia. I had brought in a little Christmas tree for his room, and there he is, us on January 1st. The first thing he remembers after his incident is sometime between Christmas and New Year's when his friends came to visit him. Essentia has those big windows, right? And Kevin looks down. He's like, oh, yeah, I got a new pickup. Yeah, in fact, it's right down there. Do you see it? Gerard can tell you exactly what that pickup looks like, where it was parked, like the color, the number of doors. That's the first thing he remembers from that experience. So a few days later, Friday, January 4th, that was 35 days at Essentia Hospital, we finally get on the road, and I feel so bad because he hasn't been outside at all for 35 days, and yet I have to walk him from the door straight into the car because we have this drive to Omaha to Madonna Rehab Hospital. But we get there, and it's sunny, and it's warm, and we can walk outside even though there's snow on the ground. And he does his rehab there for a week, and we return to Fargo, and I'm pulling into the driveway, and I open the garage door, and he pauses because he can't drive himself, so I had to get him settled. So we stopped at the house first, and he looks at this beautiful banana yellow kayak that we have hanging in the garage, and he's like, "When did we get a kayak?" And I said, "Last August when we drove down to the cities and bought a kayak and strapped it to the roof of my car." He's like, "Yeah, I don't remember that." I'm like, "Okay, do you remember working days?" He's like, "I worked days?" "No, I always work night." I'm like, "Okay, so we're not quite up to February of last year, but we're getting there, okay? We'll make up that memory slowly but surely." Gosh, those days at Essentia were hard, and I was so happy to be back home. I remember him standing in the windows at Essentia and being absolutely certain he was in Duluth or Aberdeen or Enderlin, anywhere but Fargo. Even if you pointed out the big Sanford building, right? It's like, no, they built that. They built that just last year. And I'm like, they built that big 8-story building in Enderlin? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Wow, that was impressive. Enderlin's really coming along, right? But we worked through it, and we were home, and we still had 5 months of short-term disability and therapy and everything ahead of him. But us, because it's not just him, it's the both of you. There was a comment on one of the Facebook posts, and it says, "Hey, Danielle." This is from one of our IT guys at the Sleep Center. And he says, "Hey, Danielle, we miss you lots and have kept both of you in our thoughts and prayers. I wanted to let you know that all of the staff at PDS are now at least hands-only CPR trained, if not fully CPR certified. We had the opportunity to get everyone trained and used your strength as inspiration." It's like, wow. Staying alive, staying alive. I can do it now. I'm like, if anybody ever needs it, I'm good now. So we continued with this therapy. 2019 was snowy. This was March 10th in my driveway. That was I joke that that was Gerard's physical therapy exercises because he insisted he wanted to go shovel. And I was back at work at that point. And I'm like, please don't die on the sidewalk on me. Like, we did this once. Like, I don't want to have to, like, scoop you up off the sidewalk. Just be careful, like, pace yourself. But where he came into the hospital and his ejection flow, his heart can pump out. When he came into the hospital and his ejection fraction numbers were 30 that first day, normal being 50 or 55 to 70, he was now at 40. So I was like, yay. Anyways, we're making progress.